And it is the 4th of July event here in the land of mortals. So everybody's out there with their fireworks and wrapped up in their state of nationalistic pride, which is kind of fun. And but those of us who are working with the Course in Miracles are wishing to expand the boundaries on that, to push beyond that limitation of city and county and state and nation and even earthbound identities, and see ourselves all as one in a state of divine ecstasy, living with the Creator and being the Creator at the same time. So how are things out on the West Coast there, Stephen?
Things are really well. As I was saying before, everything is just settling in now. We're settling into our new home and catching this new gorgeous view that's in front of us of rolling hills and beautiful nature. And we got a nice cool breeze here and sun's out. So everything's moving along really nicely. And I think with this 4th of July upon us, I feel a lot of energy amping up, and like people are starting to break out of their shells more, you know, with the summer heat as a catalyst for us. So it's cool.
It is. And, you know, it's time of hamburgers and hot dogs and watermelon and just savoring all of the beautiful things that life presents to us in the material world without being addicted to them.
That's the trick, right? Is not needing it, but you can choose to enjoy it.
Absolutely, yes. To appreciate the underlying energy, I guess you could say, that everything that is created in love. Sometimes the ego interprets it in a very unloving way, but nonetheless, if we go back to the core of everything we encounter, we can find that there is that little grain, that mustard seed of love, and we have to use that to stay on course with all the different variations that we have presented to ourselves here in a world that is fractured and broken apart into gazillions of pieces.
Yeah, and that is all a really good introduction for the topic we're going to be discussing on joy today. Because, you know, what good is all of the teachings without that sense of joy within us? You know, that's how we were created, as that boundless, perfect joy by God. So what good is all the intellectual material that's so easy for course students to get caught up in without that sense of practical application of joy, happiness?
That is very true. So you want to read the section on joy, and then I'll follow with the section on defenselessness.
Sure. So it says, joy is the inevitable result of gentleness. Gentleness means that fear is now impossible, and what could come to interfere with joy? The open hands of gentleness are always filled. The gentle have no pain. They cannot suffer. Why would they not be joyous? They are sure they are beloved and must be safe. Joy goes with gentleness as surely as grief attends attack. God's teachers trust in him, and they are sure his teacher goes before them, making sure no harm can come to them. They hold his gifts and follow in his way, because God's voice directs them in all things. Joy is their song of thanks, and Christ looks down on them and thanks as well. His need of them is just as great as theirs of him. How joyous it is to share the purpose of salvation.
Well, that definitely, number one, causes us to stop and contemplate identity issues once again. You know, that's what keeps coming up over and over, of course, is, are you identifying with your body, or are you identifying with the Christ within you and seeing yourself as that spiritual being? because if you're entrenched in the physical aspect of the life you are living, then, you know, mosquitoes and rattlesnakes and all kinds of hideous things are lurking around every bush and every corner. And that can challenge your sense of joy. But the more you are able to lift yourself up to a little bit higher plateau and see yourself as the Christ, and know that you are, you know, invulnerable to all the craziness around you, shifting that identity just that one tiny bit puts you out of the fear of your own mortality, eliminates the that player on the game board called death. So I think that's, you know, again, what the Course does over and over again. It takes us back through multiple avenues to look at our identity and to really work on embracing the truth of our nature as spiritual beings.
Yeah, absolutely. And something that always comes to mind for me is that idea of agelessness, when we're not, when, you know, if you could surround yourself with, you know, younger children, or you're surrounded by older people, then you're starting to see that, like, that really we have all these different expressions within us, you know, and like how really we're not confined to the age in which your body has lived. Like, we're not confined to the amount of years through which the body has experienced this world, because really all those expressions always exist within us, within our Christ self. So, you know, we can still like play like a kid and have fun, and then we can still have that, you know, like that elderly wisdom within us too, all at the same time. That's just something that was coming to me intuitively.
Yes, well, that is definitely a big part of it, is to recognize that we are ageless and timeless. And that puts us in a whole different sense of obligation, you know. And once we get past that belief that we have obligations that are limiting us, that we're a victim of our life, then that is the avenue that we can take to really claim our joy and to get out and express and share our joy, because that's really the only purpose that it has in life, is to be shared, to be given to everyone around us.
Yeah, I mean, I could go deeper and deeper into that, because there's so many things that go along with the body, like gender and sex and different preferences, maybe different ailments or illnesses or things that are associated with the body. And if you can, for a moment, consider not being identified with all those things, like you're not identified with your gender, or, you know, any kind of ailments or anything associated with the body, then you can let yourself have more of a sense of freedom of expression.
Yes, and you can allow yourself to engage with people on a whole different level without having expectations around relationships, to just be able to feel the love, to share the love. And if people don't respond the way you expect them to, you know, to recognize that, well, maybe it was my expectations that was in error here. It's not really about everybody's coming up to my standard, but about me just loving everybody for who they are and seeing the joy that we can experience with each other.
Absolutely.
Well, going on to defenselessness, and this is a good one for teachers of God. This is one that you know, you really have to do a lot of inner work, inner understanding, to arrive at a point where you can really relax into this without any trepidation. It says, God's teachers have learned to be simple. They have no dreams that need defense against the truth. They do not try to make themselves. Their joy comes from their understanding who created them. and does what God created need defense. No one can become an advanced teacher of God until he fully understands that defenses are but foolish guardians of mad illusions. And that is a really pointed remark. So whenever you find yourself falling into a need to defend something, one of the things that you are defending, that special belief, that cherished thought that you had, was not something that was co-created with God. It goes on to say, the more grotesque the dream, the fiercer and more powerful its defenses seem to be. Yet when a teacher of God finally agrees to look past them, he finds that nothing was there. Slowly at first he lets himself be undeceived, but he learns faster as his trust increases. It is not danger that comes when defenses are laid down. It is safety, it is peace, it is joy, and it is God. So this is giving us, a lot of information about our responses to things that are being proliferated all over social media and all over the internet. The idea of your food can kill you. They're raining death down on you from the skies. The guy that's in office right now as president or senator or governor or whatever is going to throw you into a state of deprivation and destroy everything that you thought you had in life. All of these things really have to be reviewed and looked at through the eyes of forgiveness, through the eyes of accepting that you had created a world that could be violated, that could be damaged, and that you could be hurt.
Yeah, amen to all that. It's kind of interesting when I look at the idea of defenselessness vibrationally. If you look at it, it's like you consider it from the idea that, well, if you're believing you need to defend yourself, well, there's always an implication that there's something attacking you. Then you're reinforcing that idea that there's something you need to defend yourself from. So the more you buy into needing to defend yourself, the more that things that appear to be outside of you are going to push in, because you're probably unconsciously bringing that attack towards you through your defensiveness. And so it's something that it seems like a reasonable thing to do, because it seems like, well, I'm defending myself because I feel attacked. But in reality, like this passage is trying to put the power back into your own mind and say, actually, it's your defensiveness that's calling attack to you.
Yeah, it's absolutely the truth. As soon as you start feeling like some part of you is vulnerable, then, that's when the vultures start to gather along the fence line, waiting for that first drop of blood. So you really have to be alert to what all this interior dialogue is all about. And that's one of the reasons why within the course, over and over again, the idea of silence is brought up and, observed and discussed, because it's our own interior dialogue that creates the outward world that we are experiencing. So if you have all of this chaos going on in your mind at all times, then your world is probably going to be kind of a rocky road. And anybody around you is probably going to be caught in that vortex. So, this doesn't mean that we eliminate all thinking, but it means that we become observant of what our thoughts are and try to tone it down. So we're thinking loving thoughts, not aggression and not fear and not revenge and all of the thoughts of our mortality. So it really is a thing of stepping into love and staying in that state of love.
This is an interesting topic just before we move to the next one, because I was putting something on Facebook about the idea of kindness, showing kindness first and foremost, because, intellectual truth was not enough, and then there were some people who were questioning that, like why, and it depends on the context, and maybe it's beneficial that someone not be kind. Maybe someone being rude has a lesson to show you, and those are all valid points and fine. But the reason why I had suggested that idea of kindness is because in my mind, it feels more congruent with love to simply express as love would, which is with kindness and gentleness and defenselessness, because it's really easy to forget. Like, even though you are still love, even if you are acting out and being rude or unkind, it's just easier to remember you are love and to see it reflected in your reality if you just, express it with kindness. Does that make sense?
It does. And it just means that you have to learn how to relax with it. Again, one of the traps of having a mind is that we are constantly giving ourselves challenges with our ongoing thinking. And whenever you, again, find yourself falling into a state of self-doubt or, wondering, who am I? What is my status in this situation or that situation? That's when we really have to take a couple of steps back and ask ourselves, is this what Jesus would do? Is this what the Christ would do? Is this what the Buddha would do? Is this what Yogananda would have done? All of these different individuals are examples, and they did not die. They did not end. They continue to live within our consciousness. If we can open ourselves up to sharing our consciousness or to sharing them in our consciousness, then a lot of our problems get instantaneously resolved. So the big thing is to step away from anything that distracts you from the fact that you were created in love, and the whole point of your existence is for the unfolding, the sharing of that love.
Absolutely. So the next section is on generosity. And it says, the term generosity has special meaning to the teacher of God. It is not the usual meaning of the word. In fact, it is a meaning that must be learned and learned very carefully. Like all the other attributes of God's teachers, this one rests ultimately on trust. For without trust, no one can be generous in the true sense. To the world, generosity means giving away in the sense of giving up. To the teachers of God, it means giving away in order to keep. This has been emphasized throughout the text and the workbook, but it is perhaps more alien to the thinking of the world than many other ideas in our curriculum. Its greater strangeness lies merely in the obviousness of its reversal of the world's thinking. In the clearest way possible, and at the simplest of levels, the word means the exact opposite to the teachers of God and to the world.
So that's getting us away from the idea that we're actually experiencing separation by giving to those around us. Because, if you have something that you have paid for with your hard sweat and toil, and then you go and give it to somebody else, it leaves you with this feeling of emptiness. But as we start to step away from that idea that we are separate from those that we are connected to, those that surround us, then all of a sudden that perspective begins to fall in a different direction. And we realize that everything we give, everything of value that we extend to those around us, we are giving it to ourselves. And that's the source of real joy. That's the source of real enrichment and pleasure.
Yeah, that's an interesting thought that comes out at times, that feeling of, oh, like I got gypped, you gypped me. because, you know, someone shortchanged you or someone didn't give you all that you felt you deserved and wanted. And so there's that ego suspiciousness that turns to viciousness over that event, because they think, oh, you did this to me, like you didn't give me, I trusted you, and then you betrayed that trust. But in reality, that I think what we're called to see is that that whole idea of betrayal of trust is impossible if you're in your right mind. As long as you're seeing the other person as your holy sibling, then you can't simultaneously buy into the idea that they would betray you. Do you want to elaborate more on that, or?
Well, yeah, the idea of betrayal only comes from a mind that believes that itself is separated. So really everything that happens, you know, if you go to a store and you buy something and it turns out not to be what you thought it was, rather than getting upset about it, you need to take 2 steps back and ask yourself, did I set myself up for this experience? And is this, you know, an expectation that was unconscious that has come to the surface? So then you can see it as being a good thing. But, you know, all of the events and people in your surroundings are reflections of aspects of yourself. So if you have a bad business deal, if you have a bad experience at a restaurant, whatever, it really is calling you to go into your own consciousness and to work on healing that and releasing it. Because if you're blaming other people for what they did to you, then you just missed the point completely, totally. That freight train just went right by and you didn't catch a thing from it.
Yeah, and even if you're watching an event of this happening outside, I found, like, even if I'm observing an event like that go on where someone's like, well, you dipped me, and oh, I didn't mean to, or whatever, like, that's going on within my own consciousness too. My own energy field is calling that event towards me so that I can look at that and forgive it.
Yes, not only forgive it, but to really work on healing it. Forgiveness is the first step in healing it, but then to turn it into nothing, to nothingize it, to realize that all of the dream is not real. That you can't hold on to tiny sections of the dream without holding on to the dream in its entirety. So you have to be willing to step, you know, that half a plateau above that inclination to hold on to all of this stuff, and to just realize it was, you know, one of Steven Spielberg's better productions, but it's not true. It's not real. It's something that is a fantasy, and so therefore we can let go of it.
Yeah, and like you said, don't run out of popcorn, right? And don't forget to laugh.
Very, very true. Yeah, laughing at yourself is, I think, one of the most therapeutic things that you can do. If you can step out of me and observe me from that exterior position and have a chuckle about it, then you pretty much got the game under control. To go on with this next paragraph from that whole thought around generosity, it says, the teacher of God is generous out of self-interest. That's kind of an interesting idea. This does not refer, however, to the self of which the world speaks. The teacher of God does not want anything he cannot give away, because he realizes it would be valueless to him by definition. What would he want it for? He could only lose because of it. He could not gain. Therefore, he does not seek what only he could keep, because that is a guarantee of loss. He does not want to suffer. Why should he ensure himself pain? But he does want to keep for himself all things that are of God, and therefore of his Son, and therefore for his Son. These are the things that belong to him. These he can give away easily in true generosity, protecting them forever for himself. So when we're engaged in, seeing value in love, seeing value in joy, seeing value in a sense of peace, seeing value in an act of forgiveness, all of those things are what God has given us. Those are the tools that we were given to overcome any issue that we might have conceived of in the process of creating this world we exist in. So it really is a thing of, true generosity is that which has no attachment to the objectified world. It is a world of love and peace and holiness, and that's what we are extending to the world around us.
Yeah, and this idea of generosity really brings me back to my grandfather, because he's Italian. He was born and raised in Italy, and he would always, whenever we came over, want to offer us like all the food that they have. Basically, they would always be offering food, which is very common for Italian culture. And there was even, like, I noticed a feeling of sadness in him if we didn't accept it. And so I learned that, like, I better just, eat something, even though, like, my mom was telling me not to do that. I would just eat because I knew it would make him happy. And, like, in a way, he really embodied that idea. He represented that idea so well, that, like, what you give away, you're actually keeping for yourself. Because for him, it was about the sharing of love to his grandchildren.
Yeah, and that's not just confined to the Italian culture. You go to Syria, you go to Jordan, you go to Israel, you go to Egypt, you go to Finland, you go to France. You encounter this all over the world. This is our natural instinct. This is the truth of who we are. When we encounter people who are self-protective and hoarding, then we're encountering the unnatural world. We're encountering a world that really isn't truth, and it doesn't exist. But yes, one of the first things that happens in Native American culture is, we put together a big feast and invite everybody in the community to show up. And especially up in the Pacific Northwest, they have these big feasts of giveaways. And a person who has accumulated a lot of things in the course of his life will have a feast and give away literally everything he owns, all of his possessions. And that causes him to start off in a more humble state of consciousness. So a lot of cultures really try to reflect those core values. And unfortunately, as we become more civilized and sophisticated, we step away from that natural instinct.
Yeah, absolutely. And it feels like maturity to me, to be always willing to give and to want to care for the members of your tribe. And that's true leadership to me, is wanting to rise above that sense of a separate self and see the unified self.
Yes, the hoarders of the world would not agree with you, but again, we're in the process of healing those people too. So because those people are us, so it's all reintegration. It's all pulling things back to the founding phenomenon here that has created the world we live in.
Well, just make sure to let those hoarders know that they have more than enough, and that we're including them just as well as part of the group.
I'm going to sneak in and grab every damn thing they own and sell it on eBay. So, but that's every hoarder's nightmare. So I probably shouldn't be spiking that. But anyway, well, we've got through a couple of good sections here. We've reviewed joy, defenselessness, and generosity. So perhaps we can reconvene in a week and start off with patience.
That sounds great. And so did you want to let the listeners know potentially if they want to chime in for our talk in less than an hour? Huh.
Yeah, we've got a discussion coming up on Om Times Radio. And if you don't have the chance to check it out live, we will be we'll sending the link out so that we can you can listen to it in the archives. But it's going to be more about astrology. We're doing a little bit of a dialogue about astrology in the material world and how those colliding planets are affecting your life.
Yeah, sounds great. So cool. So then we'll meet up in less than an hour, and we'll meet up to talk more about Course in Miracles in another week.
Yes, and you guys have a lot of fun with that fabulous view. I've seen the photographs, and you live in an awesome place. So enjoy every minute of it, and don't step into any of those cow pies that I'm sure are all around you there.
Okay, will do.
Okay.
All right. We'll see you soon, Chris.
Okay. Bye.
Bye.